Hello everybody and welcome back to the last video in the man in the middle attack section. Now we will cover the usage of Ettercap, which is a tool that comes pre-installed in Kali Linux. So let us get started. Now this tool has two interfaces. One is the interface over terminal, so basically command line interface, and the other one is the Gui interface. Now you can access the command line interface just by typing Ettercap, and it will give you your available options. Now it asks you to select interface, so you can do that, but right now what I want to show you is the Gui interface. They have some differences, but they are the same tool. So now you can find the Gui interface going to the sniffing, spoofing, and then you go to the Ettercap, which is right here. This is the graphical user interface. You click on it and it should open up the tool. Now we will not cover the tool in great details, we will only cover some of the options available right here. So let us get started. Now what you want to do, basically first of all, you want to go to the file, sniff, and choose type of sniffing. So what you want to do is choose unified sniffing, most likely. In some other cases you might want to choose bridge sniffing, but right now we'll go with unified. And here you can select your network interface. Now I only have the ETH0. If you have your wireless network card adapter connected, you can select it right here if you want to use that one. Right now I will just go with the ETH0, so just click here OK. And right here we can see down there, started unified sniffing. Now what you want to do right after this is basically go to the hosts, and you want to scan for all the hosts on the local area network. So scan for the hosts, it will scan all possible 255 hosts, and it will show you which hosts are currently up on your local network. It will say 4 hosts added to the host lists. Now to access the host lists, you basically just go here hosts and then hosts list. Here you will have all of the devices that are currently connected and online on your local area network. As we can see, let me just check out what is the IP address of my Windows 10 machine. It is .1.3. This one is my laptop, and this one I believe is my Kali Linux machine, since there isn't really any else machine on the network currently. Now what you want to do after that, let's say we want to target our Windows 10 machine, so we want to ARP spoof the Windows 10 machine. What you want to do is basically click on the router and then add it to the target 1. So add router to the target 1, and it will say right here host 192.168.1 added to target 1. Then what you want to do is choose your Windows 10 machine, or basically any other machine you want to ARP spoof, and choose right here add it to target 2. And then let me just see where it is. View targets, current targets right here, and here you will have the list of the targets. Now what you want to do after this, basically let me just go to the filter. I believe it is right, no, it's not right here. You can go to the resolve IP addresses, and what you want to do after this is basically go to the man in the middle, which is this right here, and choose Arp Poisoning. This will ask you if you want to sniff remote connections on only pose and one way. Right now we want to sniff remote connections. Click here OK, and you will see that the ARP spoofing has started. Now everything that your target actually types in any HTTP website will be shown right here. So if it visits an HTTP website and tries to log into some page, you will see the username and password in clear text right here. So now another thing you can do is basically, let me just see, where is the plugin, manage the plugin. So just click here on manage the plugins, and here you have few type of plugins that you can add. For example, DNS spoof, send spoof DNS replies. You can also run DOS attack, and you can run all of the other attacks as well. Now I believe here is the SSL strip as well as in the previous tool, so you can roll the SSL strip as well, and this basically performs the same as the previous tool that we covered. So if I were to for example, visit an HTTP page and log in, for example, it will be showed right here. Now, that is the simple use of this tool. If you want to, you can try out all of these plugins right here, but most of them are not really that important, or most of them are actually only there for you to specify a more detailed attack. This will do its job for now on. You might want to add the SSL strip and DNS spoofing later on, but we already did that in the previous tool. We will not be doing that in this tool as well, and I just wanted to show you how this tool works, and that would be it about this tutorial. So in this section we covered the man-in-the-middle framework, we showed how to download it, how to use it, we ran some different types of the attacks, such as, for example, randomizing images, then using screenshotter, then Arp spoofing, DNS spoofing, and we captured the usernames and passwords on HTTPS websites as well as on HTTP while performing the SSL strip. And those could be some of the useful attacks that you can perform on your local network. Now, these attacks do not work on the outside of your local network, so they only work for all the targets on your wireless network or on your that are connected to a router. And in the next section we will start learning system hacking. So we will, for example, learn the Metasploit framework in great details. We will learn some of the exploits for that. We will hack Windows as well as Linux, and then after that we will also hack some of the Android devices and iOS devices with another tool. So that would be about it for this section. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you in the next section where we will start system hacking. Hope I see you there, and take care. Bye. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Python crash course. Now, before we begin with actually coding our advanced backdoor in Python, we need to cover some of the basics that you need to know in order to begin coding your own programs. Now, this will not be a Python course, since that would take too long. What I will do is I will just briefly explain in a few videos the most important things that you need to know in order to code in Python. We will cover some of the basics, and then after that we will go into the coding of our own backdoor. So, before we begin, there are two things you will need if you actually skip to this part, since maybe some people only got this course because of the coding section. So if you did that, what you want to do is basically just install Wine. We did that in the previous section, in the system hacking section. So you need to install Wine. You need to have this path right here, so cd root.wine, and then if you type here ls, you will need to have this drive C installed right here. In that drive C you also need to have the Python. So if you go to the drive C, let me just enlarge this and edit this or make this zoom in so you can see it better. You will see that right here I have Python 27 installed, and with that Python 27 I also have installed the PyInstaller module, which we will use in our Kali Linux machine in order to make our programs executable and in order to make them be able to run on Windows. So those are the things that you will need. Basically that's the only thing that you need. After that we will only code the program in simple nano command or in the Python interpreter. So before we begin, let me actually edit this a little bit. So let me make this transparent background a little bit better so you can see the code better. So if I just put it like this, or let's make it fully transparent, and let's close this. So what we want to do, let us navigate to our root directory first. So before we actually code anything, what you need to know is that there are actually Python interpreters in terminal module or available in terminal. So what you can do is just type here Python, and what this will do is it will open up the interpreter for the Python command prompt. So here you can execute any Python commands or any Python program you want. What we will use this for is basically in order to check out the syntax of a program, so you don't have to go through the entire code in order to check out if there is some error in the program. What you can do is just basically just type here anything, so a equals 3, which will actually give the value of 3 to the A. But if you, for example, type A equals B, it will give you an error saying name B is not defined. So once you run a bigger code and you get, for example, an error, it would be much easier in order to run some of the commands right here in order to check if you specify the correct syntax for them. So that is mostly what we will do for the Python interpreter. The programs that we will code will be coded in a normal file .py. But before we begin, let us actually start off with the simple instructions or simple commands or simple basically scripts that we will run in our interpreter in order to see what we can do and what we can do. So first thing we want to check out is the one that I already typed, is actually giving a value to some constant or to some changeable. So we gave the value to the A equals 3, and if we just type here A, it will give us that the value of A equals 3. But if we change the value of A to 5, for example, and we type A once again, it will now change the value of A to 5. So this right here command doesn't have its value anymore. So next thing you can do is, for example, let me just exit this, clear this a little bit, make this a little bit larger, and then run the Python interpreter. Let's, for example, give the value to A equals 5 and value to B equals 3. So what you can do is perform any basically addition, subtraction, multiplication, or whatever you want. For example, A plus B, and it will give you the value of A plus B. Or you can also type here C equals A plus B, and what this will do is it will give the value of addition of these two numbers to value C. So if we just type here C, the C has value of 8, which is the same as this command. We just specified the result of this command to be stored in this variable. So what you can also do is A divided by B, which will give you 1. Since this is not a module, this will only give you the times that B is consistent in A. So 5 divided by 3 will give you the 1, since 3 is only consistent in 5 one time. But if you type here, for example, float A equals B, this will give you the same value, but this will give you the point 0 after that. Now why this does that is because it stores the value in decimal, and it will give you the same result just with the additional decimal number after it. So float basically means if you just type here any number, so float A, which we gave the value of 5, it will print out 5.0. Float of B will print out value of 3.0, or basically just 3, just it will add the additional .0 after it. So that is another thing you need to know. What you can do basically is also store a string. So C doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a number. For example, since we specified here that C equals A plus B, which is 8, we can type here C equals and then we give it a string. So for example, hello world. And what this will do right now, C won't be 8 anymore, it will actually be a string, which is hello world. And if we just type here print C, which is the command, print C, it will print out the string that is consisted in the C variable. Now, make sure to differentiate the syntax between Python 2 and Python 3. They are very similar, but for example, print C wouldn't really work in Python 3. You will need to specify print and then open brackets, and then C and then close brackets and then hello world. Now that will work in Python 2, but the syntax won't work in Python 3. So what we will do is we will use Python 2 in this crash course. So you can use the syntax for Python 3. I believe in Python 2 both of those work, but if you're using Python 3, make sure to check out the correct syntax for a command that we run. Now also some of the libraries that we need to use might not be available for Python 3, so also be aware of that. Now let's see what else we can do. So we saw how we can actually add a value to a single variable. We can add two variables and put it in a third variable. We can also check the float value of a variable. We can also store a string in a variable. But let's say, for example, we want to specify a value So let's say c equals 5 now, and we want to type that string equals, so string is another variable which will store a string, this number is, and then we specify the percent sign and then d, and then we close the quotes. Now what this will do is basically it will, after we specify in the open brackets, so close the quotes, open brackets, another percent sign, and then c. Once you type right here, whoops, let me see, invalid syntax, string object is not callable. Let's see. Okay, so, and then we type here string. Okay, so just a little problem with the syntax. What this command right here will do is basically this will store a string with a value right here of c. So if c was, for example, 8, the string would be this number is 8. If c was 3, this would be this number is 3. So this %d right here is referenced with the %c right here. Now %c is just referring to put the value of c instead of these two signs right here. So if we were to change the value of c, for example, for any other value, this string would be different. So that's also another thing that you can do with Python. Now, as I said before, this will be just a simple crash course. We will also cover functions and classes, but we will only do them briefly so you can understand in basics how things work. If you want to fully understand everything, you need to have some previous knowledge of Python, or if you can just watch some other courses or tutorials that will teach you a little bit in depth of Python. So let me just do a little trick right here. So import OS system, whoops, clear, I believe this is the command, OS, or it's os.system. Okay, just a little bit of command to clear your screen. So let's see what else we can do right here. Now there are also Boolean values which can be either true or false, but we will cover them in more detail in the next video where we actually do the loops, since they are mostly used in some of the loop parts of the code. So we will do that in the next video. But for now on, let's see how we can actually do the same previous command but just with strings. So in the previous command we saw that string equals, so if we just type here string equals this number is then %d sign, and instead of %d we specify to put the value of c. But let's say if we want to type here, for example, string1 equals this, or let's actually add a string equals, this is a new value, so let's add a normal string, hello world. So if we just type here string, this will put us a value of the inside of the string. And what we want to do right now is just type here string1 equals, and then our quotes, our string is then 2 dots, and then %s sign, and then after that %string. So what this will do is same with the previous command, just the %s is referred to a variable that is storing a string. So right now you can guess that the output of string1 will be our string is hello world. So if we just type here enter and just type here string1, you will see that our string is hello world. So %d is referring to numbers and %s is referring to strings. %f is referred to float numbers, I believe. Let me just type here. So let's say b equals float, or b equals 3.0. And then we type here string2 equals our number is, and then %f, and then %b. And if you just type here string2, this will print out the float number value of b value, which will actually add us as additional digits right here. So make a difference between the %f, %s, and %d. There are others as well, but only for now on we need to know these three, or basically we do not even need to know the float value. We need to know the %d and %s. So just make sure to remember that, since this will something that we will use in our backdoor. So that will be about it for these variables in this tutorial. This is just something very simple. We saw how we can actually add a value to a variable, how we can print something, how we can store strings into a variable, and how we can actually print out the string with a different variable. So this is the example. In the next video we'll cover some of the other basics for Python. Make sure that you at least stick with this part of the Python crash course if you don't have any previous knowledge with Python, or else you will really hardly follow the backdoor creation that we will do later on. So that will be about it for this tutorial. I hope I see you in the next one, and take care. Bye. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Python basics. Right now what I want to show you is a really important command that we will use in our backdoor creation, which is the raw input command. Now what that command does is basically it allows us to actually give users an input for a certain command or certain number or something like that. Now I will show you what I mean by that. So let's say we have a variable called number1. So number1, it's easy to realize that we will be storing a number in this variable, and we want to, for example, take an input from a user that is using our code. So how do we do that? First of all, we want to specify that this number will be an integer. So what we want to do right now, we want to type here int, which stands for integer. And what we want to do is open up our brackets and type the function raw underscore input. This raw underscore input will actually ask a user to input a number for us. Now, it could be a string as well, but since we specified right here integer, it will only accept an integer value to be stored in number1 variable. So right here we want to open up another bracket, add a quote sign, so double quotes, enter a number, then we put two dots, then close quotes, and then close two parentheses. The first one parenthesis is closed for this one, and the second parenthesis is closed for this one. So this command basically means that we will actually store a given number from our user. So they will get prompted enter a number, and then they specify, for example, 3, press enter, and then our number1 variable will have a value of 3. So let's press enter right here. And as you can see, this is what our users of code will see. So they get prompted enter a number, and let's say we type here 8. And that's about it. So right now if I just type here number1, you will see that number1 has a value of 8. But let's say, for example, they type here str, which is a string. This will produce an error which will say string is not an integer, basically, since it really isn't. So we need to make sure that we receive an integer from the user, but if we wanted to example receive a string, you would just need to use the same here command, just specify here instead of int, specify string, or str, which stands for string. And right here, of course, you will not be specifying enter a number, just enter a string. And as you can see, now if the type str, type object string is not callable. Let me just see what do they mean by that. Alright, I don't think you need to specify anything for this string. Let us just see. So if we delete this right here, str, yeah, for string you only can specify the raw input. So let's see number1 now what has, which is a little bit ridiculous name for a string. It has a string value of str, which is what we specified. So let me just clear this a little bit so you can see it better. Then I will type the command once again so you don't get confused with this. So let's see, this command will be used once we want to get a string input from a user, and this command will be used once we want to get an integer input from a user. Now also, one thing that you need to know is basically as a hacker or as an ethical hacker, it really doesn't matter your code basically doesn't matter if it is well written or not. What matters for us is that it actually works and it doesn't break all the time. So our exploits, our backdoors, They all need to be coded however you want to code them, but the main point is don't break. They shouldn't break. So if you, for example, upload a backdoor on your victim PC and it breaks, it is not a really good backdoor. You want to be able to execute commands as long as you want, and you want to be able to execute some of the tasks that your backdoor can perform without any errors. So that is the only thing that you need to focus on as an ethical hacker, is to create the backdoor without actually producing any errors during the execution of those backdoors. So we saw in the previous video how we can give a value to a variable, and right now we saw how we can get an input from a user. So let's actually make our first program that is not in the Python interpreter. So how we do that? First of all, what we want to do is exit this. So how you exit it is exit and then two brackets open and closed. And this will give us back our root terminal shell. What we want to do is, first of all, let's see where we are. So pwd, we are in the /root directory. And right now let's create our directory for Python programs. Or you can call it any way you want. I will just call it Python programs. And let me change my directory to there. Right now let us actually type here nano python1.py, which is our first Python program, and right here you will get an output of a simple nano window, which we saw a bunch of times. So here we can write anything we want. Make sure once you open a program that you add the .py extension, which stands for Python program. If you do not have this .py extension, you will not be able to execute your Python program. So the first thing what you want to do right here is specify this right here. So at the first line, you want to specify hashtag, then exclamation mark / user bin Python. This is something that you need to include in all of your programs, since it is referring to the Python directory where all the libraries are. So for example, if you were to import a different library that comes with Python, you will not be able to use it if you don't specify this path right here. So remember to always include this in your Python programs. As you can see right here, if I just cd Control O this, enter and then Control X, and I go to the user share Python, and just type here ls, you will see that there are Python programs right here. So you need to specify this path in your Python program. So let's go back to the root Python programs and then nano python1.py. Right now, let us see what we can create. So what we will do right now is, for example, let's create a program that will ask an input from a user. So it will ask for example, a number, or it will ask for two numbers, and then it will actually multiply those two numbers. So let's do that. It is rather simple. So let's say number 1 equals, so we saw in the previous command, integer raw underscore input. Then we specify enter first number, two dots, closed double quotes. You will see that this string right here gets basically gets outputted in green format, which means this is a string. We also need to add two additional brackets, close brackets, for these two right here. So that is the first command. The second command, we want to ask for number 2, so equals integer raw input, enter second number. This is rather simple, so it is easy to understand. And right here what we want to do is result equals number 1, and then this star sign, then number 2, which will multiply. So this star sign right here is used to multiply two numbers in Python program. So as we can see, we will get the result sign out, we will get the value of these two numbers multiply stored in the result. But right now, if you were to, for example, compile this program or make it an executable and then run it, you would not get any output right here, since what we need to do right now is actually type here print result, which will print the value stored in result for us. So just Control O this, X, or pardon me, enter and then Control X, and if we just type here ls, you will see we have our Python program here. Now, you will not be able to run this until you make it an executable. So how do we make Python program executable? We make it with chmod +x. So +x stands for executable. We already covered all of this. And then python1.py. we just enter that and just type here ls once again, and we can see that our program is now in green format, which means it is executable. And how do we run it? We run it with basically just ./python1.py. And as we can see right here, it will ask us for first number. So let's say the first number is 3, enter the second number is 4, and we will get 12 as a result. But let's actually make this even a little bit prettier. So nano python1.py, and let's actually print right here. So we'll do it with the same command that we covered in the previous video. So the result is then 2 dots, then as you remember, we need to specify the %, and then S for the, or pardon me, then D for the number, then we close the quotes, and after that %result, which is our integer number, which will actually give us the value of result instead of this %D right here. So if I save this once again, so Control O and then Control X to exit, and then I run once again, so 3, 4, and you will see the result is 12. So that is rather our first Python program. This is how you can make it an executable, and this is how we can do the most simple program that we covered for now. In the next video we will start off with some of the loops that are in Python, for example if loop, while loop, for loop, and all of that, which is really important for us and which we will use in our coding section of Backdoor. But for this video that will be it, and I hope I see you in the next one, and take care. Bye! Hello everybody and welcome back, and let us continue with our Python basics. In this video we will cover the if loop. Now if loop is basically the most simple one, I would say. It basically just does the same as it says, so if something then do that, and else do something else. So I will explain it a little bit better, don't worry. For now on, let us open up our second program and let us see how we can actually use the if loop. So for that, first of all, let's open the interpreter. So just type here Python and you will see this. Let's say we want to write the most simple if statement that we can write. So for example, a equals 3. This is simple to understand. We stored value of 3 into a. And then if a equals 3, then 2 dots. Now what this basically does, the 2 equal sign checks if the value of a is 3. So if a really is 3, you can't really specify just 1% sign. It will not work, since 1% sign means that you are actually giving the value of 3 to a. You need to specify 2 equal sign in order to perform a check on a if a really is 3. So if a equals 3, we will do what? We will actually print a is 3. So we print a is 3. And then we can add or let's actually just leave it on this, so we can see if a equals 3, print a is 3. And as we can see, it printed out a is 3. But let's actually switch it up. So if a equals 4, print a is 4. And if we press twice enter, you can see it didn't print out anything, since a isn't 4. We specified a to be 3 in our variable specification. So this is the most simple use of if statement. What you can do is basically make an if-else statement which will actually perform an action if a equals 4, and it will perform a different action if a isn't equal 4. So let me actually clear the screen so we can do that. So os.system clear, oops, and let's actually do the same thing. So a equals, for example, now 5. So we have a to be set to 5, and right now we want to write our first if-else statement. So if a equals 5, we here tab it and print, then we want to print a is 5. So this will only be printed out if a really is 5. And what you want to do right here, else, and then 2 dot sign, and then enter once again, tab, print a isn't 5. A is some different number, for example, and press enter. And now if you press enter second time, whoops, you will see that we get a is 5 printed out. Since that is true, a really is 5, and it didn't even consider this statement since it got this one to be true. So if a equals 5, print a is 5, and we got printed out a equal or a is 5. Now in the syntax wise, you need to make sure to add after if statement and also after else statement, you need to add these two dots right here, since it will not work if you do not add that. So make sure to double check that before you run your program. And let's actually run our our second program as a nano window, so as our real program and not a program in interpreter or Python interpreter. So ls, we have our first program, and let's type python 2.py, which is our second program. As we remember our previous video, we need to specify the path to Python, so user bin Python, and after this we can actually run our code. So let's actually run a code that will check out if number is odd or even, which is simple. We will use an if else statement. So let's actually type here number 1, which is our, or actually just one number, we need only one number, and let's use the raw input function, which will give our users of code a choice to specify any number. So enter any number, two dots, closed double quotes, then we close two brackets right here, and let's write an if else statement right here. So what we want to do is if, open up our brackets, number module 2, now this % sign stands for module. Basically we use this in order to check out if our number is even or if it is odd, if it has any remainings after the division. So this sign right here, make sure to remember that this sign is module. We will not be using it that much, but it's still a good thing to know. And then equals 0, so if the remain is 0, then we need to specify that the number is even. If it is not 0, the number will be odd. So if we just type here two dots, so remember to put these two dots right here, enter, and then tab it. So always tab it in order to make sure that your code looks a little bit prettier. And in Python, I believe you cannot really write an if statement under the line in the same order. You need to tab it in so it knows, so the Python knows that this belongs to the if statement. So right here we want to print number is even. And we want to specify here else, which will happen in any other cases that the number isn't even, which is the only case that the number is odd. So we want to print else, print number is odd, and then we close the double quotes. So here we can see this is a simple program as well. So we perform the module, and then we actually print if number is even or if number is odd. So let's Control O this, enter, Control X. Let's make the program to be executable with this command, so python 2.py. And right now we can see it's executable, and let's run it. Here we ask for a number, we specify 2, it will say number is even. If we just type here Python, if we run once again and specify 3, it will say number is odd, which is correct. So that would be a simple use of a Python 3 script, or of a Python 2 script with the if-else statement. Now there is also another thing that you should know, which also we will use, is the elif statement, which basically allows you to specify multiple statements and not just two. So let's edit our code. Now let's actually write a different code where we will have 3 different statements. So let's delete these 2 statements right here. We will leave the number to be here as a variable, and we will leave the user to specify which number it will be. So let's see, if number, let's specify open brackets, if number equals to 0, type here, or print number, or given number is 0. and then we basically just go into the next statement. The next statement will be elif, and then we need to specify another statement right here, elif. So elif number is bigger than 0, then again 2 dots, print given number is positive. And then we close this double quotes. And then the last statement will just be else. So in any other cases, any other cases would be the cases where number is not bigger than 0 and when number is not equal to 0. So any other case would be print given number is negative. And then we close the double quotes. So Control-O to save, Enter, Control-X to exit, and you will see that our program is still executable even though we edited it, so we can actually run it right away. So Python 2, enter any number, let's add 3, it will say given number is positive. If we run it again, give it -2, given number is negative. So since -2 is a negative number, and then once again 0, given number is 0. So you can specify as many elif statements as you want. So for example, if you need to cover 5 different statements, you would be specifying first in the if, the next 3 in the elif, and the last one in else statement. Make sure to have the 2 dots at the end of each ones, and make sure to specify these statements in given brackets. It is easier. You can also do it without them, but it is a good practice to actually specify them in the brackets. So that would be about it for this for this if statement video. We will cover the for statement in the next video, and I hope I see you there. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back. And in the previous video we saw how we can use the if-else statement in our program. Now let's see another statement that we can use, which is the for statement. So it basically says it basically does as it says. So for something, do something. Now the basic use of this would be, so let me open up my Python interpreter. The basic use would be, or what we will use most likely, is for something in range of a few numbers. So let me just show you what I mean. So let's say number equals 1. And then we want to do this command right here. So for I, or basically for anything, for I in range, range is basically an inbuilt function. So in range 1, 10, then we close the parentheses, then 2 dots. So let's first explain what this means. The range is basically, it is saying for some I variable in range from 1 to 10. So this I will take the values from 1 to 10, do, and then you press enter, then tab it so we can push it forward, and just type here number equals number plus I. So let's press here enter once again, and if I just type number once again, you will see that our number is now 46. Now if you did not understand this, you will probably you're probably asking yourself, how is the number right now 46? So let's take an in-depth view on this right here. So we first specify our number to be 1. Then we specify this right here. So for I in range 1 through 10, do number equals num plus 1. So for the first circle of this command, I will be equal 1. So it will then do number, which is 1, equals number plus I, which is then 2, so number is 1 and I is 1 in the first circle, and then our number will become 2. Then it will go back, and then it will do that the I is now 2, so since we already did 1, and now it will be 2, so now this will be 2 equals 2 plus 2, since our I is now 2, or 1 plus 2, pardon me. And then it will do it all the way through 10, and then it will give us the output of all the added numbers together, which is 46. So that is how the for loop works. Now let's see how we can also use it in order to, for example, increase all the numbers in a list. Now we didn't really cover the lists yet, but just type what I do. So let's make our third program, nanopython3.py. We specify the path. I will not say why anymore since I did it already twice. And right now, after we specify the path, we want to make a list. Now, a list is basically a list of different strings or different numbers. In our case, we will use a list of strings. So number underscore list, we'll call it like that. You can call it anything you want. And we specify lists with these brackets, with not the normal brackets, but with these brackets right here. And then we specify the numbers in our list, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we close the brackets. So this is how you specify a list. You can put any numbers here you want, divided by the comma. And right now what we want to do is use our for loop in order to, for example, increase each number from list by 1. Now how do we do that? Well, it's a little bit different, so the most of the commands is actually same. So what we want to do is for I in range, and we want to open up our brackets, but not type here the range, we want to type here length, since we want the length of this list right here to be the range of our loop. So for I in range, and then open brackets len, which stands for length, and then the length of our number list. Whoops, number list. Then we need to close two brackets and then put these two dots right here. So this basically says for any number, or not for any number, for some variable I in range of the length of number list, we want to perform the number list of I plus equals 1. Now I will explain what this does in future lectures. For now on, just trust me that this will actually increase the numbers in our number list by 1. And if we print at the end number list and save this, so Ctrl X to exit, chmod plus X in order to make it executable, and then we run the Python 3. You will see that the number list is no longer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is now 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So basically that is the simple use of the for loop. Now don't be worried about these lists right now. We will cover lists later on. For now on, I just wanted to show you what this can be used for. So for example, if you had a list that is too large, you could, with this simple two-line code, change the values of all of those numbers in a list, or basically in our case increase them by 1. So for loops and if loops are very useful. You will also see in the next videos why. I basically only show you some of the most basic examples. They can be even more useful than this, but for now on this would be enough. In the next video we will cover a while loop that we will also use in our backdoor program. Well, actually that is the most important loop, since we can specify some pretty good things with it. I will show you that in the next video, and I hope you enjoy this one, and I hope I see you in the next video. So take care. Hello everybody and welcome back, and in this video right now we will cover the while loop in our Python programs. So we already covered two loops, which is the for loop and if else loop statement. Right now what we want to do is cover the while loop, which is a loop that we will use. It is mostly used in order to perform actions forever. For example, if you just type here while x equals 1 and then do some action, it will perform those actions forever in case x really is 1. In case it is not 1, it will not perform anything. So let us actually start off by, as always, opening up our Python interpreter, and the syntax is the similar for the for and if loop. So basically you just type while and then some statement and then two dots, and then you basically press enter, then tab the next command and you specify what you want to do if or while that statement is true. So let's see a simple use. So a equals 3 while a equals 3, so double times equals, since that is actually changing the checking the value of a. We tab it, print hello. And if you enter this, you will see that this will print hello forever. Now, why this will print hello forever? Well, basically because a is always 3. We specify a to be 3. So let me just close this. So Control C to interrupts, as we can see, keyboard interrupt. What we actually typed right here, first of all, a was 3. Then we typed here while a equals 3, and then we said print hello. It printed hello forever, and it would basically go forever in case I didn't stop it, because a will always be 3. But if we just type here a equals, couldn't find equals 2, and then we pressed once again, you will see that this actually, or wait, I forgot to print. So a equals 3 while a equals 3, a equals 2, print a. And you can see it only printed a once and didn't go forever as in the previous video, or pardon me, as in the previous example. What this basically means is, as we can see right here, a was set to 3, so while a was 3, we would print a. But since in our while loop we specified a to be 2, it didn't really print a forever, since in the next loop when it came here it was checking if a equals 3, but a wasn't 3 then, a was 2 then, so it basically broke the loop and it only printed out a to be 2 once, since it only went through this entire loop once. So that is the simple use of the while loop. You can also just type it like this, so set a Boolean value for a, which is either true or false. Right now let's say true, and then while a, print hello. Now you can guess that this will print hello forever, since it basically says while true, print hello. As we can see, if I press here enter, it will print hello forever. You can also do it basically while true, oops, I didn't type here anything, print it's true, and this will also print it's true forever. You can also specify a to be false, and then while a, which means while false, print it's false. And you will see this won't print anything, since a is false, and this will not go through loop. It will only go through loop if the specified statement is true. If it is not true, it will skip the loop. So that is a good thing to know. It can be useful for many things. Now let's see a combination, for example, of this loop and a different loop that we used before, which is the if-else statement. So let's close this and write our next program, and nano python 4.py. We specify the path to Python, user bin Python, and now we can write our program. So let's set some value x to be true. So we set the value x to be true, nothing really there to explain. And let's start our while loop, while x. So while x, then 2 dots. We tab the next command that we will specify right here. So basically already now we know that it will execute the commands in while loop, since x is true, so it will not skip the while loop. So right now let's specify something called user input, for example, or user name, and then we equal that and use the raw input. We do not need to specify anything before, we only specify when we want to use an integer. So right now we want to get a string from the user, so raw input, enter name here, and we close only one time parenthesis. And let's use now an if-else loop. So if user name equals to q, which basically in our case will stand for quit, or let's leave it on q. So, and then we specify 2 dots, break. We will type here break. Now the break command basically breaks out of the loop. It will, in our case, close the entire program, since our entire program is a simple one while loop. But the usage of break, as I said, is only used to break out of a loop. It can be used in infinite loops, so such as this one. until you specify Q, it will work. So let's continue this program. So if username equals Q, you break out of this loop. Else, we can just type here print hello, and then we specify the S for the string, and then specify the %S for username. And this will print out hello and then the name for every name we type until we specify Q. If we specify Q, it will break out of the loop and close our program. So let's see how this will work. So we Ctrl O to save, Ctrl X to exit, we chmod it to be an executable, and then we can run it. As we can see, it asks us for names. So let's say first name John. Hello John, and it will also right after that ask us for another name. We can specify here Jack, and it will say hello Jack, and now this will do basically this forever until we type here Q, and if we type here Q, you can see it will close our program, since we said if the name equals Q, you break out of the loop. So that is another useful thing to do. As you saw right here, there wouldn't really be another way to close this program properly if there wasn't a statement for a simple command to break out of the loop. So that would be about it for the basics of while loop. For now we covered all of these three loops, which is for if else statement and while loop. And in the next video we will go into something called lists, which we already saw in a previous video, but we didn't really explain it there. Right now we want to explain lists in a little bit more detailed. So that will be about it for this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!